Hello, my name is Luís Espírito Santo, and this is the first podcast from Deep Learning Sessions Portugal. We are a volunteer group of deep learning enthusiasts dedicated to organizing events and creating content about AI, with a special focus on deep learning and a particular interest in Portugal. This is our very first podcast. We present you the recording of our opening event, which took place the 27th of January of 2023 at Unbabble's headquarters in Lisbon. To open our working year, we hosted our traditional roundtable where we discussed last year's achievements in the area and make predictions about what will happen this new year. We thought that it would be useful to make this content available to you in whatever place you usually get your podcast so that you can enjoy it in the car, while cooking, or while you're working out. We also tried to make other useful content such as our monthly newsletter on deep learning in Portugal and our regular meetups with outstanding Portuguese researchers. Check all our initiatives at deeplearningpt.github.io. Hosting this event, we have Inês Pedro, our colleague at Deep Learning Sessions and a senior machine learning scientist at Zendesk, who talks to tech experts Pedro Saleiro, Cristina Fonseca, Luís Sarmento, and Isabel Trancoso. Pedro Saleiro is a senior director of AI research at Fidzai, a Portuguese company dedicated to identify fraudulent payment transactions using machine learning. He is especially interested in responsible AI, including topics such as fairness, biases, and explainability. Cristina Fonseca is a VP of product at Zendesk, a Danish company focused on user experience and providing tools to help services go digital. She is also a tech entrepreneur and investor, so she brings a business-oriented view on the topic. Luís Sarmento is the co-founder and CEO of Indutiva, which focuses the application of machine learning to computational challenges in fundamental sciences such as mathematics, physics, chemistry, or biology. So he's one of the best persons to talk about machine learning taking over and being applied in other areas. Isabel Trancoso is a professor at Instituto Superior Técnico and researches vocal speech. Academia has a main role in research and development, and we consider that no one would be better than Isabel to discuss academia's point of view on this topic. We hope you like this discussion, so we leave you with our host and speakers to discuss Deep Learning is Alive, Trends from 2022 to 2023.
So I think we can start with the roundtable. If you want, please feel free to sit over here. You also have more chairs over here if you want. I want to thank everyone for coming today. Yeah, so in the first place, I'd like to thank Isabel, Luís, Cristina and Pedro for accepting our invitation, and everyone for joining. And we've prepared some questions about what are your thoughts on the developments of AI last year and some of the predictions for this year. And so the first question I think I would love to hear from everyone. What were some of the most impactful developments in AI or deep learning this year that you would like to highlight, and why?
Okay. So hello everyone. First, I just want to make a side note that I was brought to AI by Luís Sarmento, so it's really a pleasure to be in a panel with him. The good thing is that we often disagree a lot, so I think we have good ingredients to have a lively discussion. So about the question and about the trends of last year, I'd say that, of course, I expect that we will talk about, generative AI, large language models, ChatGPT. I'm pretty sure that we'll cover that. And because of that highlight, one thing that I found very interesting is research around alignment, which is an area that is very keen to me. So aligning the AI with the human values and goals. And in particular, I like to highlight the Instruct GPT work that was released early in the year, in which reinforcement learning from human feedback is really achieving really nice results from filtering, from removing toxicity from large language models. And what I like the most about it is that it's truly empirical. So it's driven by a given application and trying to mitigate the risks of the AI going wrong or being misaligned with our goals and intentions. And that's how I believe that we should tackle responsible AI and ethical issues is from an empirical perspective. So very glad that results are very, very interesting. And even it was also used for other things like everything about math, reasoning, even codecs, all of these, instruction and prompting is really, really, I think, outstanding. More particularly in my area, I'd say that going a little bit more low level, I also found very interesting that finally research in explainability is going towards specific applications and not trying to get a general interpretation approach to postdoc explanations or even in model explainability. So now we are seeing that a better understanding from the user needs for explainability for a given application, understanding how we can have kind of synergetic teaming with AI, which is something that would be the ultimate goal, that we want this augmented intelligence. I don't really want to use AI in humans where both are good in performing a task. I want them to be synergetic and to complement each other. And there's been lots of progress on defining requirements and defining research questions around explainability in that area. And I think I should pass.
So first of all, thank you so much for organizing and Inês for the invitation. I was hearing Pedro and I was thinking, I shouldn't pretend I'm that technical because I'm here with three very well-known and respectful researchers, and I'm the product person in AI, and so I work at Zendesk. We sold a company in the AI space to Zendesk a little bit more than a year ago, and I'm a VP of product. So my role is to productize AI research and create value for the customers. So my perspective is a little bit different, and I'm also an investor at a couple of companies, including some AI ones, like is the case of Isabel. So my perspective is different. And related with that, I would love to ask the audience, who here is technical research? Okay. So there's a couple of people that are not, because I just want to make sure. So in terms of trends, which was the question, large language models is of course a huge trend right now, and we know that when the marketing department starts asking you for things and being very excited about ChatGPT and what are we going about it, what are we going to do? Responsible AI is another big one, but I think what I would like to highlight is how, in the past couple of years, we've been trying to understand how do we build trust in AI by the users of AI. Because if you speak with as a startup founder and as a person that invests in startups, there's lots and lots of very good applications of AI, but in lots of cases, companies don't buy that and users don't want to use that because somehow they have the feeling that they can be replaced. So how do we build trust? Explainability on the technical level is very important, but also passing the confidence, for example, something that we do at Zendesk is passing the confidence level of our predictions to the users that are using the tools and the projects, because then they can understand, okay, if this is wrong, it's not because AI is not going to help me, it's because the prediction of the algorithm is actually low. So I would say large language models, of course, explainability, the responsible AI. So all of these trends are very important, but I think they need to be balanced with how do we drive adoption of these technologies in the real world.
So I guess now it's me. So I'm coming from kind of a different perspective. Over the last 2-3 years, I haven't been thinking a lot about natural language processing or machine vision and all those more classical.
Because you're a founder, so you need to think about your company.
No, we're thinking about other ways of using machine learning, and I think what's exciting, or what's been exciting in the last couple of years, there's been a couple of things. So one is how we're seeing machine learning as a tool, and as a framework to think about problems, going into totally different spaces, right? So we've been seeing things like what is now becoming a really, I would say, a solid field, a subfield of machine learning, which is geometric deep learning, really expanding into many fields of science. So I think that's one of the most important things, and I think it's one of the most impactful things, that machine learning has become sort of the lingua franca for doing science. So I would say that in the last year or so, we've seen that happening a lot. Yes. So there's a way of thinking about problems that is coming from machine learning to other fields, and I think that's really impactful. And there's companies, building around that idea. The other thing that I think it's many times underestimated is the power of the ecosystem, of the infrastructure. There's so many tools to actually bring machine learning models to reality right now. So things like, for example, Ray. I don't know if you guys are using Ray to train machine learnings at scale. That's amazing. And that we didn't have those things 5 years ago, and now we have, right? So those are sort of a Google-style type of tools. They're out there. So I think that was the other thing that I've seen in the last maybe couple of years and last year to become really popular, and it's so important because it really allows people to move fast. And the other thing is that happened last year is GPUs again, right? So I don't know if you've been buying GPUs lately, but they're amazing. So they're like the last series from NVIDIA is just insane, right? They got 16,000 cores, and it just costs like $2,000 or $3,000. And so basically now we have computing power that you can buy on a supermarket, which is exactly the same of the fastest supercomputer in the world in 2005. Just 15 years back, right? We can buy it on the supermarket, right? So I think those are the three things that I think are the most important things I've seen last year.
So thank you very much for inviting me for this panel. I think that I couldn't say no to Inês, because when I was looking for women or girls to show the community that AI is not just for men, she was one of the volunteers. So I couldn't say no. So being a professor, retired professor recently, I'm witnessing the same trend that we see in our classes. Unfortunately, everyone stays away from the first row. So, but I work on speech, on spoken language, not on written language, which, if we are going to talk about ChatGPT, as we will, I'm sure, it's going to be a focus. And working on speech, I have to confess that I would have difficulties pinpointing what has been very impactful this particular past year. So it's kind of an increase of the use of pre-trained models. I wouldn't just say language models, but pre-trained models for everything. And models get so complex that explainability suffers a lot. So it's very, very good to see all the new trends in terms of the new goals towards seeking explainability. And the rest, I have to confess that I haven't seen anything particular striking in Yes, well, it's more of the same. It's getting better all over the place, but it's more of the same. And it has been a little bit incremental. Mhm. So in our area, in speech, what has happened is that most people work with data sets that are much, much smaller than all the other ones that you can see in other areas. Um, and people do tons and tons of work with the same data sets, and that has been gone for a while. In the past, we always tell our students, don't learn from test data, but I think that we are kind of doing so many experiments with the same data sets that we are a little bit learning from test data. So I haven't been so impressed lately with the papers that I've been reading on my particular area. It's more, it has been a consolidation of what has been going on for a couple of years, but it's great fun to work with. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Now I have a question more for Luís, but everyone feel free to jump in the discussion. So as we've said, this year there were a lot of developments on generative models, like DALI 2, which is text to image, and ChatGPT more recently, for example. So my question is, what's your take on this trend of generative models? Do you think we'll see more prompt engineering and that these models could replace the need for fine-tuning task-specific models, or what are your thoughts on this?
So I think definitely we're going to see more of these medium to medium type of mappings, right? So there's a lot to do, right? There's so many possibilities. And we're just starting, right? So so images and sound, there's just one type of signal. And there's others that we still haven't explored so much, but I think that's going to happen more and more. For example, think about drug design, right? You can just think about the same mapping, right? That you would love to have a way of mapping, let's say a human genetic code or some sample of a human to the drug that is the best drug for that person, right? So you'd be able to generate some structure that describes the drug that is best for the person, right? So I think that's what we're going to be seeing. Lots and lots of these mappings, because information is out there. And I think we've had trouble in embedding, multimedia, meaning media from different medias in the same space. That has been a technical difficulty, right? So you wouldn't map so easily from text to image or from text to speech. That would be even a little bit challenging. So it's not so easy, right? So and I think what's nice about these sort of diffusion models is that they kind of break away from some of the bottlenecks that we had. They just allow you to map things into this space, and it just works, right? So I think we are going to see more and more of these things, more and more ambitious. So I think we should be start seeing videos, like full-length videos being generated soon, right? Like at least a few minutes. I think that's possible. It's going to take some time because we need more data and more computing power, but that's going to happen. So I think now we just need to start thinking about what are the mappings that really make sense, right? And I do think we have a lot of data. I do think for these things to be possible, we're going to have to learn from multiple media at the same time, right? So it's going to be sort of learning from a number of signals to a number of signals, right? Or a number of structures to a number of structures. And I think the information is out there. The computing power is almost there. And so I think that's what we're going to see a lot. Now, I think this raises a lot of questions, right? Because the generative process is difficult to control. You can generate anything basically, right? So I think that raises new challenges. But I think it also is gonna put us in a position where we're going to be faced with different ways of understanding reality. because hallucination on a number of these processes is going to be scary sometimes, but it's going to also be very interesting in terms of expanding our knowledge of the world, right? These machines can generate things that we had never thought about, right? So they're not, you can argue that they're merely interpolating. I think that's a, kind of technical discussion, and it's an interesting one. But they can also be extrapolating, right? We still don't know exactly what they're doing. But if they're extrapolating, that's amazing, because they're going to come up with things that we never thought about, right? And so I'm super excited about this generative AI. And I think it's going to map to lots of problems that we still haven't kind of tried.
Thank you. I don't know if anyone wants to add something.
Yeah, I think that Luís is absolutely right in saying that multimodality is one of the things that we must learn how to do. Maybe because that's the way children learn as well. We have to keep thinking about it. There's more rewards in facing multimodality than just a single modality. More knowledge about the context as well. Yeah, so definitely we have to, it's going to be a huge challenge, but a fun one. Yes, definitely.
Okay, and now moving on to more on the product side, Cristina. Do you think that models like ChatGPT or these generative large models can be a game changers for companies? I think you talked a little bit about it. What do you see? There are some potential uses of ChatGPT for startups, for example.
Look, I mean, like I think that's very good news, and I think there's different answers to that. Everyone is like super excited about the technology. And like, we know the technology and the models have been there for a while, including the API. But if we think about like the ChatGPT innovation, was that the UI made that accessible to everyone. So like the conversational aspect of ChatGPT, like suddenly everyone can go there and like ask a question and ask the bot to do stuff. Like I have like one of my best friends is really into numerology. And like she has been entertaining this idea for a while of like doing an app that does stuff. The first thing she asked ChatGPT was like, can you build me an app? How would you build an app to do this? And like that thing gives you like clear steps. So like having people feel empowered by technology like this, like is a game changer. Like in the same way that suddenly like, yeah, like everyone within a company can think about and can feel they have the power to do something with ChatGPT. But I think companies will still struggle to productize that. Again, if we look at the past 10 years, and I mean, my perspective, maybe you worked in different environments, but I see lots of companies in the past 10 years hiring researchers and very smart people, and then the discipline to productize the research that these people do has been like a real struggle. So we still need to productize like these and to build products with these powerful APIs and these amazing models. And that's a discipline companies really need to focus on. Where I believe most of the promise is with startups. Because if you start a startup and like all your business is around using AI to like make the world a little bit different, hopefully better, then like that's where you have a chance. Like if your life depends on you making that work, you will make that work. I think bigger companies have a little bit less incentive in making sure you can productize these. I think at Zendesk we are doing the right things. That's our job. But I think companies like especially big corporates will struggle a little bit into incorporating these amazing AI advancements into their. But startups, I mean, I don't want to reveal any secrets, but I could give you like some examples of like there's very cool startups already using ChatGPT to like automate a couple of processes. I think prompt engineering, it's going to be an interesting thing to do in like this year, because it's about getting the best prompts. And then there's all the legal aspects, right? I mean, a startup also has less to lose in terms of legal, like what can we do with this data and so on. But that's another discussion.
Okay, so maybe now I can move on for a question for Pedro or Isabel or everyone that wants to answer. So as we know, these big, large models, they need to read or consume a lot of data. And most of the times this data is just crawl from the internet and encodes a lot of biases and toxic speech that humans also have. And so this is also a concern because you can have smaller companies using these models like ChatGPT and they're echoing these biases. So what are some ways that we can prevent this from happening or having models that are biased?
Right. Starting from ChatGPT, it's relevant to recognize the huge effort that OpenAI has put into having safeguards within ChatGPT. And you know, LinkedIn over the last few months has been all over people trying to fool ChatGPT or pointing out this wrongdoing or this edge case. And in that sense, there's a huge bias there on trying to fool the system in a way to so it shows any kind of bias. But the technique I mentioned before of reinforcement learning from human feedback, I think they did a really good job on that. I've tried myself to make it be, you know, get some racist or patronizing or sexist kind of comments, and it's very hard to go there. Style is a different thing. There has been some people complaining that because of the confidence it shows, and one of the, by the way, one of the safeguards they added is they call it a set temperature. So set the temperature of the answers of the LLM in a way that it can be more expensive or more conservative. So more conservative means more tied to the training data. More expensive would be on going a little beyond of what you saw in the training data. But the technology of reinforcement learning from human feedback, they have a, there will be also engineers on that, lining the system for that. So that's kind of recognizing the good that is there. And on the other hand, you know, OpenAI doesn't have so many risks as Google or Microsoft or Facebook, which we know that, for instance, Palm, and we know that, you know, bigger models, and we just have blog posts from Google. We don't have yet any kind of demo out there. So the technology is very common, but what I think is very different is that OpenAI is much less to lose on getting out there and getting something that is not really a product, is more a demo of capabilities of LLM that has safeguards and is usable. But in terms of an actual product, I think we are still far from, and also picking on Cristina points, we're still far from seeing an actual product. And I think the most promising one would be on Codex side. But going to the biases, yes, it's very hard to control the data that is being used for. So it has been more on the postdoc trying to safeguarding, limiting the model than curating the inputs. And I think it's very, on these large language models, it's going to be almost impossible to get rid of all the bias that you can see on the training data. So it's more on the usage, more on the how it will impact people. But at this moment, someone said, and the other day I was listening to the Twiml podcast, and Samir Singh was saying like, is kind of a big bullshitter. That's what the ChatGPT is at the moment. So let's take it with a little bit of cautious, and I don't expect any bank, any you know, high stakes application using ChatGPT anytime soon.
So working on speech, I can tell you a lot about biases that come from not being careful with the data that's used for training. I remember that we were all trying to help with the detection of COVID-19 back in 2020, yeah, the early days, tried a lot. The first data set that became public available was even the subject of a challenge, a research challenge. And of course, we wanted to try it out. And I had a brilliant student working on that. And the results, the test results were not that good. And I told him, just have a look at the data, do some spectrograms, you know, things that tools that we have to be able to analyze the signal in time and frequency at the same time. And what we've seen was that there were a couple of files that had been recorded with what we call a limited bandwidth. So they were not the full spectrum of frequencies that we are used to, probably some fixed telephone network that cut that. And the problem was that they were all positive. All these 8 examples that we had in a very small data set were all, the ones with the limited bandwidth were all positive. So guess what the system started by learning? What is the bandwidth of the signal? So this is just an example. At another time, we wanted to detect sleep apnea. And well, this is a disease that is more prevalent in men than women. We had much more examples of men with these diseases than women. So guess what the system started by learning? Gender, of course. So it's a question of of being careful with the data. And I think that the people in OpenAI had tons of people trying to clean up what's been there. Of course, using all the tools in the world that they can to first throw it out, everything that looks toxic. But the knowledge that we get in the data will be very helpful in the future. So train right.
So, if I might add something. So I'm actually not worried about that. Especially when the bias is so obvious or so explicit. So I would be much more worried if there was other types of biases that we would have difficulty in detecting, because those are the dangerous ones, right? So having racist speech or sexism, that becomes so easy to detect that it's not really such a problem in the sense that you can act on it, right? There's going to be relatively good tools to act on those. I'm much more worried about technology in general introduces biases that are almost invisible, right? And they just work in the long run, not in the short run, right? So for example, does anybody know how Google ranking works? The answer is no, you don't, right? What biases are there in that ranking? I don't know. Is there racist results on page 1? No. Great, that's easy to take out. What biases are there? We just don't know, right? And there are, because probably, and I would guess, through ads, through money, there's results there that are probably not as relevant as you'd expect, but you still get it, right? So I'm much more worried about that type of bias and toxicity, which is totally invisible, than the ones that, they're obviously, it's obviously Nazi speech, right? Okay, I can get that, right? Is that dangerous? Yes, it is. Do we want it? No, we don't. So I'm not arguing for it. I'm just saying that I'm not as worried as with those biases than I am with the others that I just cannot identify. They're out there, right? Yeah, I think OpenAI is doing a pretty good job, and I think people will pay to actually have versions of ChatGPT that show some sort of bias. So that, I think that's called character building, and we're going to pay for characters. So I think there's a business model in actually creating characters, things that we interact with, which are sexist or which are racist. I think that's going to be a business in the future. I know it's crazy, but I think there will be character building on top of these things. And the characters won't all be angels and sweet. Some of them will be pretty nasty, and we'll buy them anyway.
Okay, thanks. I think we'll move on now to look into what's happening in Portugal. And so I'd like to ask Pedro. Portugal has now a Center for Responsible AI, and it has different startups and research centers, and they will collaborate on innovative AI products. And I would like to ask you, can you elaborate more on this organization and what kind of opportunities are there for people that work in Portugal in AI?
Absolutely. I'll just also, I could not resist to this is an open conversation. So definitely agree with this last statement of Luis, especially if we're talking about fiction or any kind of leisure activity. So one of the things that is very common is that if a book author wants to talk about racism, we'll create a racist character. So for sure, we'll have generative AI that will show bias, and that will be good, and it will actually be useful in any kind of a creative approach. And I definitely will see like even fake actors and the video that imagine thinking of a story, sorry, and creating a video or a small video describing. I think it's going to be, for creativity, will be really amazing approaches for that, and we need those biases. But anything that has to do with impacting people's lives directly, financial services, healthcare, education, and so on, for sure we want to encode our values, but there is room for everything, and maybe we'll just tackle the specific bias in each application. I think this is super important, and also has to do with products, because researchers, and then I'm going to move to the Center for Responsible AI. Researchers cannot develop responsible AI that is useful in the lab, because we need to feed the responsible AI research is fed from an actual real world problem. Then our automation, our artificial intelligence systems are showing failures modes that have impact that need to be tackled. It's about risk assessment, it's about risk management, and it's about mitigating those risks. Some of these tools are not safe for use for education if they show some of these biases, or if they lack transparency, or if we are creating a financial advisor product, as Luís was mentioning about Google Rank. If I have some hidden interest about selling to my bank customers a given financial asset or financial product, for sure I may embed that on the recommender that will interact with the customer. So we need for sure regulation, external auditing for that, which we don't have in Google search engines. After 25 years, we still don't have any external auditing, and there's lots of antitrust, but about auditing how different businesses are being affected by Google, are some thrive, others not. I think that those problems will still be there on new applications of AI and with advance of technology. Other thing that I was mentioning about not being at the lab is that at the same time, technology is evolving so much. It's almost like we are escalating a mountain. We kind of made the safeguards ready for the application with this given language model, and then a whole new language model which has much different failure modes and capabilities down, and now everything gets obsolete. And we have seen that in evaluation and benchmarking large language models, that has become obsolete as new, more powerful models that don't show those failures, they show other failures. So I think Center for Responsible AI is a huge opportunity for bringing AI technology to products in a way that is the right way of doing things. And doing things in the right way has definitely many implications. Of course, there are ethical implications, that we are being products that will bring innovation to society. And innovation is only innovation if it's beneficial for society. But at the same time, also brings economic advantage, because what we've seen in the past is that any irresponsible AI, any irresponsible products resulted in financial, losses for the companies that develop those products. So if we are taking those measures preemptively with risk management, a mitigation approach, we are doing our homework. So we expect that we don't have to spend more resources in the future to correct things, or even our, if Inductiva, develops, helps doing simulation of a drug that all of a sudden, as a special kind of a fast track of development and things go really wrong, there is a reputation of a recent organization that is at stake. So it's also for the best interest of the organizations to develop that. That's what I expect to see from the Center of Responsible AI. Paulo Dimas mentioned the other week that they're thinking about product pods. It's a concept of bringing research labs, bringing a product company to solve a problem together in a legal aspect, and creating these multidisciplinary teams, not for bringing, not in the sense that we'll, by being multidisciplinary, we'll have less issues. No, it's on different expertise coming together to solving a real issue. So I expect to see that in the project. Really exciting to see in next few years what products will get out there.
So I've been involved in the Center of Responsible AI, and I think that's a fantastic project. Like, I believe one of the best advantages is to have several companies that all want to make AI like part of their secret sauce, collaborating, which is something that you don't see a lot in the ecosystem still. Because I mean, like, it's highly technical, like I do my things in my cave, and people don't get together as often as I think they should to like collaborate and to discuss everyone cares about responsible AI, everyone cares about the biases, everyone cares about explainability, but we are not getting together to collaborate on that. So to me, this is a really, really a big plus. Maybe like revamping the ecosystem after this pandemic, which like sent us all to the cave. So we need to come out, and I think this is a very good excuse.
Yeah, we'll be waiting, and we want to see some results in what comes out of it. Okay, so Cristina, now that you have the micro, I'll go into the companies and startups in Portugal. Is there any startup that you want to highlight, or like that had an investment this year for its work in AI? And maybe also Luís wants to comment on this.
So I was going to tell which company, because I think they're doing like really, really cool stuff for real. I haven't seen a lot of AI companies pop this year. I think there's more and more companies incorporating AI into their products, but I don't see lots of new companies that have a strong AI angle to start. I mean, I think Cleverly was a very special one. It's still like in our own mode, like at Zendesk, we still try to behave as a startup sometimes with some constraints. I think Luís is a good example, and I believe these next years, as people see more opportunities, especially for productization, because if you want to build a business around AI, like you need a business model. Like at the end of the day, like you need to prove the value that you're bringing. So either like you raise money or you get customers. So I hope the next couple of years that happens, and also like the ecosystem, like these people that work in other companies in AI and research, just go do their own company. I look. I think in Portugal that's still not very, very frequent, right? Like you come from Google and so on, and like in these big companies, there's lots of people leaving and doing their own startups. I think in Portugal, the successful technology companies are still not producing enough startups. So I would love to see that.
I will not forget this. So in a few years, I'll reach out to Cristina about it.
You should.
So thanks for the mention. I'm not sure if we're so successful, but it's good that we have the appearance that we are. It's always good. So I think it's tough for AI companies right now. I think it's tougher now than it was a few years ago. And I don't think it's just because there's like this money crunch. I don't think that's the issue. I think there's less space now. And the reason why I think there's less space is because if you think about like the full technical stack, right, that goes from hardware to cloud to infrastructure and ops to APIs and then to applications, what you see is that you're getting this push from the bottom, from the hardware and from the cloud companies, just to move up, to basically squeeze everybody up them, right? Meaning that, things like, for example, ChatGPT, right? The interesting thing about it, it's a great technology, is that because it really puts a lot of pressure in a lot of business models, right? Now, if there's this API that allows people to just do this sort of prompts and get results back, and if this thing is so powerful, even with all the biases, right? So can 5 people somewhere in the world just build a product which is similar to a product that's been built over the last 5 years by 300 people? And the answer is yes, they can, technically, right? They probably don't have the same marketing, right? But technically, they can build the same product because the entire tech stack has gone up so high, it's producing so much value that people that were working on long projects from a few years ago, now they're really in a difficult position, right? So, but at the same time, if the technology is there and if anybody can do it, or more or less, right, then anybody can do it, which means that the competition is so fierce that it's difficult to create a defendable business, right? So I do think it's tougher now. And one of the reasons why we're not seeing a lot of startups is because it's becoming tougher and tougher to be a startup for innovation, right? For actually coming up, yes, for finding opportunities that pay the bills. And I think that is also something that we need to think about, which is, I think, you're an investor, and I think we're at this point where there's really no free lunch for investors anymore. And investors will have to lose some money in trying more and experimenting. So yeah, so I think you probably have to lose even more, in the sense that you're going to have to do some more risky businesses, right? Because there's obviously business out there. It's just not the one that you can immediately see. Maybe, as you mentioned, right, there's people now thinking about creative ways of using GPT. That's great, but anybody can do it. I mean, once they figure it out, 100 more people can do it. So there will be other aspects of the business, like getting to the market, right? Really being able to market your product pricely correctly and all that are going to be key. So maybe not so much the tech itself. I don't think that's going to be the big differentiation, at least if you're operating in this field. But other aspects of business will be the key. So I think it's just tougher for startups now.
Yeah, business model. And I think this is something me and Luís discussed before. So I think I'm going to share it with the group. I think, especially in the research field, building a company in Portugal and in Europe is fundamentally different than doing it in the US, because in the US, the funds have a lot more capital, there's a lot more funds, and the pressure and the mandate that investors here in Portugal or in Europe, at least a majority of them have, maybe I would have a hard time justifying investing in a pure research company. My fund's mandate doesn't allow me to do that. And I think the US, things are a little bit different. And that's why we need to position ourselves more in the application layer space, because it is what it is. Or go work remotely to US companies, which is a very good adventure as well.
Thank you. So now I think we need to cover academia. So we've covered companies. So this is for you, Isabel. What role do you think academia and universities can play in the acceleration of research in AI? And what can they do to attract talent there?
Well, let me start by the last part. attracting talent with current rules for funding in Portugal, it's getting more and more and more difficult. But that's just politics, okay? I think that right now we don't need to convince students that this is a very, very cool area to work on. I mean, we don't need. What we need is to be able to convince students that high school students, you know, even before that this is cool. I think that there's a lot in terms of AI, basic AI, that can be taught to very young kids without math. Just the concepts. They can have even fun doing some of the stuff. And so it will be cool to convince this younger generation to take on this challenge. And we need to convince more and more, because we need more data scientists, we need more engineers, we need much more of that. Now, academia needs data, needs cool problems to work on. Sometimes we have brilliant ideas, you know, and sometimes we are stuck with usability problems that are not straightforward to us, because we are not close to applications. So it's coming back with the Center for Responsible AI. It's a wonderful opportunity for academia to be, it's not just a question of doing applied research or more or less applied research. It's being able to see all the sides of working on AI, and things like privacy, usability, explainability, of course we cover, but all these are so important, and we haven't yet scratched the surface. And sometimes the problem is that the success is mind-blogging, you know, success of all these large language models, the ChatGPT and all that. It's so amazing that people get the idea it's all solved. I mean, most of these models just try to predict what is the next word. And it's extremely powerful, but it gives us illusions of that the machines are understanding everything. They need a lot of context. We don't know how to model context at all. Common sense. I mean, but it's, well, I must tell you, just because one of my students just forwarded me a paper yesterday called "How Close is ChatGPT to Human Experts?" Have a look. It's extremely interesting, because they had both naive users that had never used ChatGPT and expert users, which are very used to try to fool ChatGPT, both classifying answers of ChatGPT as human or not human in different ways. And in several domains, like legal, and I think it was psychology, people actually preferred ChatGPT slightly, because the answers were more helpful, lengthy, but very, very well structured in the way that they have been trained. It's amazing to read all the aspects that they compared in the paper. I found it very, very, very interesting. In other domains like medicine, they like, people like answer straight to the point, and they don't like a long a long list of things with a summary at the end. It's quite interesting to see the pros and cons. But I was telling about the challenges that lie ahead of us. I would say that whatever we can do to put more structure in our models, because right now it's a big amorphous thing, difficult even to explain to ourselves when we try to put in another block, another embedding, another whatever. And I think it would be putting more structure there. It's going to be a huge challenge, apart from the multimodal stuff that we also discussed. There are huge opportunities. The important thing is not to be fooled and think it's solved, because this is not at all.
If I may add just a quick thing. So I've been kind of thinking a lot about how these chat GPT things really look smart, right? And they do look smart. And I think one of the reasons why they look smart is because we're not as smart as we think ourselves. And I think this is, I actually, I'm not joking. I think this is a defining moment for us, because I think these models actually show that humans in general, like all of us, each of us, we're not that smart. And I think we've built this notion of what intelligence is that machines can quickly fool. That tells a lot about what we think intelligence is, if machines can quickly fool them, right? And it may be even the case that we're not really as smart as we think. Maybe we're just like, they're saying that ChatGPT is like a parrot, right? Maybe that's what we are. We just still haven't figured out that we are actually just parrots, right? Our smartest is just like replicating stuff. I wouldn't say word by word, but some unit by unit, right? So it could just be that. So I'm actually super interested in seeing what's going to be the next version of this thing.
I think it's going to be, people find it sometimes too neutral, and it's very good for a number of applications. For another ones, we need something much less neutral. I think they're going to train it with all the punctuation signs that we have, a lot of dots and a lot of exclamation and question marks and whatever. It's all the emoticons in the world will be there. I think this is going to be the next GPT. It's my prediction.
We've touched in some important points that like ChatGPT sometimes it's correct and it's giving like these impressive answers because it's read a lot of text and it can kind of understands language, but it doesn't understand the world, right? It doesn't have common sense. It didn't interact with the world. It doesn't know how it works. And I think, Luís, you mentioned that maybe we are not measuring intelligence the correct way. So first of all, like how do we define intelligence, and how would be a good way to measure it? Before there was the Turing test.
I'm being a little bit more extreme. I'm not saying that we cannot measure intelligence well. I'm saying we're not intelligent. We're not as intelligent as we think we are. And I think that's really the thing that these machines show, is that maybe our brain is actually quite a simple thing, and all our processes are quite simple. It's tough to admit that, right? But it may be the case, and there may be physical reasons for that to happen, right? So just think about how much energy our brain uses. It's tiny. It's 20 watts, like the power that the brain uses, right? 20 watts. It's nothing. So that nothing cannot produce a lot. It's tough to just think about this, but it can't. It's just 20 watts. So can we build a machine and just inject, 100 gigawatts on that machine? Will that machine be able to compute something much more complex than our brain? Probably it will. So I don't know if this ChatGPT needs another, I would say, Turing test. I think that's all super nice, and I think we're going to discuss that a lot. But I think what is really interesting about this discussion is about us as humans really starting to understand our limits, right? We've done that before in terms of our physical limits. So nobody will argue that a machine is not as strong as a human, obviously, because there's machines which are much, much stronger than humans. I think the same thing will happen to brains, right? And I think it's going to be an amazing discussion for the next 5 years, 10 years. Like, what is intelligence? Like, are we intelligent, or are we just repeating things that we've somehow encoded in some neural embeddings and chemical embeddings, or are we just repeating stuff, right? Maybe we are. I don't know. And I think that's what is so interesting about all this AI, is because it's a really good I would say standard for us to compare human intelligence against. So I think we need for ourselves other standards to measure our own intelligence, not ChatGPT. ChatGPT or some version of ChatGPT, I think it will beat humans. I think it's inevitable.
I don't know if anyone wants to comment on this.
Very hard. Thanks, Luís.
Allow me to disagree. No, I just want to say that, you know, natural language understanding, you know, computer vision, there are all of these kind of tasks that we tend to assume that humans are very good at. And in fact, very simple models have been already outperforming humans in tasks like fraud detection, in tasks like risk assessment, resource allocation. So in a way, we are already outperformed by AI in many, many tasks. Even so, if we think about the speed, even if we just focus on efficiency, for instance, we are not really efficient on making decisions. So the logic reasoning, that type of intelligence that we are trying to put ourselves against ChatGPT, maybe it's the one that we always thought it was like untouchable. And that for sure, I definitely agree. What I want to kind of raise is that, what about the combined intelligence? What kind of opportunities lie ahead, which is something that we are starting to see with ChatGPT? I would say like is kind of there's been I'm not even sure, maybe you can help me on that. When there was a technology that we were not quite sure what can it does for us, and I think ChatGPT is somehow striking and puts us in an overwhelming position because we're not quite sure what we can actually do with it yet. And it kind of make us kind of in a curious way thinking on can we all the ways we can be more productive with the help of this kind of a system.
So one really interesting use of ChatGPT that I've seen in our office is that lots of people at Intuitiva are using ChatGPT to code. Which and I think I haven't been coding a lot, to be honest, but for those who have, I think it works really well, especially to debug. So you can just say, hey, what's wrong with this? What does this error message mean? And it's quite amazing. I've seen like some people using it, and it works really well. So I think when you think about these large language models, the way I like to explain it to people who are not in the field, I like to really dummy down them and say, well, there's just big databases, and they have a really nice, really interesting query language, which happens to be natural language, right? So when you're talking about prompt engineering, I think it's very similar to being a database administrator. You know, there was always this DB guy that knew how to do that crazy query with, you know, triple chains of selects, and I think we should look at these machines, like at these models, more or less like that. They're just enormous databases. They have really complex query languages. You'll have to learn how to query these things, and these things will become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you can query them correctly, you'll get tons of answers because, you know, lots of things are already answered out there. Like the web is pretty big, right? So, and if you were operating on this sort of environment where you're a coder, it is very hard for you to write something that is not on a web 100 times. It's really hard to do that, right? So for that type of applications, I think it's going to be amazing. I think we're going to find lots of these applications all over.
Just think of the impact this will have on teaching programming languages and software in general. Yeah, it's going to be a game changer, I think. We haven't really addressed very much the impact of AI on teaching and learning for humans, but it's, well, when I was a little kid, we still learned, how to do multiplications and everything, and even square roots. We learn how to do square roots, which I don't think it's taught anymore because machines do it for us. And so it's a couple of years ago when we could start dictating by voice, kids start losing motivation for learning how to spell. And because, English, with no spelling rules, it's crazy. So you have to learn so many things by heart. So why not just speak to your mobile phone or to any laptop or whatever? It does the spelling for you. Why learn spelling in English? It's so bad. So badly behaved. No nice rules. And this, I think that AI is gonna have a big impact on how we teach humans from the very early days, very much. It depends on what we think it's important to teach and what we can always depend on a machine to be there and to do. It's also food for thought.
I think what's going to be important to teach is what's always been important to teach, which is to ask the question. Like, what's the right question? And I think that's really tough. So right?
Amazing at finding out what they don't know. Yeah. And that's one of the things that maybe AI is not doing yet so well, is asking for confirmation when they are of things that they don't know, asking for clarification, extra information. That's we need to work on that as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for answering all of my questions. I think now we have time for the audience to ask their questions. I think this micro is dying, so maybe we can use the other one. Este aqui, do you think it will work? That's right. Wants to ask a question to the panel, please raise your hands, and then, yeah.
So yesterday I was making a question and ChatGPT was not able to answer this. So we have bias variance, and when we trained these models, bias variance can be high or low. It depends of your daily patterns and how your data perform on daily basis. And so bias variance is connected with human unpredictability. So everybody is using the phone and everybody knows your content shows in your phone exactly related with your words. So my question to ChatGPT is, if bias variance is low, we are reinforced daily patterns in humans. So reinforce you repeating your daily patterns. It's a difficult question, sorry.
I'm not sure I understood the question, so I don't know if anyone has, like, can you help us understand the exact question? So see, if I'm ChatGPT, I need to ask for more information.
Okay, so imagine in a simple way, you're pregnant now, and you in your phone
Too much.
are, baby stuff,
Mhm, mhm.
baby. Then the algorithms are start to following you, show you baby stuff everywhere, shops, the advertisement, blah blah blah. Kind of this is simple, but then you need to stop the algorithm to send you this information, because the algorithm thinks is always what you want to see. You know what I mean? So is the algorithm is repeating your daily patterns and is not exactly aware you're not pregnant anymore, and it keep showing you the same stuff. What is your bias variance? It can change. So today you are interested in this topic, tomorrow you're interested in other topic.
I mean, I think I get what you're trying to imply, and I think that's been the universe of recommender systems in the last 10, 15 years, right? So how do you bring novelty to the recommendation and all that? So here's the thing: the way I'm not an expert in recommender systems, but I think what things like ChatGPT may bring, or models like this, is the notion that there's a timeline, right? So most recommender systems, they work on this model, which is people who, like the typical Amazon structure, people who do this also do that, right? But they don't usually have this sort of time adaptation, because you can do this just for one thing for one time, and then you're not repeating and you're going to go elsewhere. So they don't have that model of the world embedded in them. Most recommender systems don't have that, right? And what I can sort of vaguely comment is that you're probably going to be seeing a lot more of this model-based framework on recommender systems, and things like ChatGPT encode that information. Like, so it's a little bit what Cristina was saying. Like, people are now using ChatGPT in creative ways. I don't know if they're using it for recommender systems, but that could be a way. Like, should I keep doing this? How long should I recommend this thing, right? Maybe ChatGPT knows the answer. Oh, you should do it for 9 months. No, I think humans are very predictable. I think humans are very predictable, and I think that's like been like that for many years. Humans are very predictable. Predictable. I think I'm predictable.
So, so first of all, thank you for the organization, for your discussion. I'll be having this question a bit more for Luís, but I think it can be open for the whole panel. So I'm going to spoil a bit the party about ChatGPT, and I would like to ask a bit more about another, I don't know if I can say algorithm, but about alpha tensor. And I think for me, it was a bit of a mind-blowing result, what they obtained. And so my question to you would be, how do you see the AI doing research in physical sciences, mathematical sciences, biology, and if you could talk a bit about
Glad
that
that you asked that question. So I do think that I do think that we're reaching our limits in terms of our intellectual power. I do think that. So I think we've reached more or less what we can deliver by just using our brains. And I think what you're going to start seeing is this notion of having models that start with some of the rules that we know, some of the physics rules, some of the chemistry rules, and they will try, which are models, which again are models, right? All our science is a model. It's an approximation, right? All differential equations are approximations. And sometimes I think we forget that, right? That it's just an approximation. And we're going to start with having machines starting with that approximation and exploring the space, which is what physicists do and chemists do. They explore the space, right? But they explore it in the space which is, they explore it in a way which is very slow. We're going to see machines, automating this exploration. So I think you talked about alpha tensor. I don't know the details, and I think, is this the one that does the multiplication? Yeah, it's the multiplication one. Okay, because there's so many alpha x. Okay, so alpha tensor is the multiplication one. And again, I think it's the same, right? You have a rule, and the rule works well enough. It works. You can prove something about our rule usually, but you don't prove it for all the possible input distributions, because that's impossible, right? So you prove it in general, and there could be some of these corner cases that if you know that the input has some distribution, you can do something magic. Nobody figured it out, right? Nobody figured it out before because it was a special case. But if you can identify the pattern, and if you learn some shortcut for that, then you're going to use it, right? And I think that's what alpha tensor does. I'm not sure. Google, please correct me. But when I don't know anything like something, I'll ask the CTO.
No, it's just this one coming from DeepMind, so I know a little bit the papers they published. So alpha tensor was a system developed to minimize the number of basic operations in multiplying matrices. And there are known algorithms that took n operations to multiply two matrices.
Yeah,
and by training a neural network to explore different sequences of operations and integrating this in a reinforcement learning loop, in which the reward was given to minimize the number of total operations, the algorithm found new algorithms that actually were more efficient, right? So what Luís is alluding to is that this can happen in many different scenarios, right? So the space of possible algorithms that solve a problem is huge, right? Like the space of possible programs that given an input, provide that output, it's huge. And humans, are not born with an innate capability of optimizing algorithms to their limit, right? So it's only natural that machine learning will do it better than us in some situations. And at Indutiva, we are interested in these kind of problems, and both in mathematics, combinatorics, and physics. So in physics, we are able to specify the basic rules and the basic laws of nature that we already, through the centuries, distilled. But you don't know how to apply them efficiently in a big system, right? Maybe you know the laws of quantum mechanics or fluid dynamics, but you don't know how to write it analytically for a system of thousands of particles. And it's possible that you can learn neural networks that make predictions related to such systems much better and much faster than going from the basic rules and the basic algorithms you are able to implement and do a very heavy computation. Probably there are computational shortcuts that a human programmer cannot encode, and we will be able to learn them.
I wouldn't say it better.
Well, I have a question. So outside all of these areas that we've been discussing, what other major industries that are perhaps more traditional, for example, energy, food, manufacturing, do you see technology like ChatGPT substantially improving? Any examples that come to mind, or?
It's a very good question. I'm not sure I have specific industries, but I think it's more like specific processes. And we were chatting just before, like this year is probably going to be a little bit tough for the economy, but like at the same time, all companies will be looking to like make their operations more efficient, right? So energy costs are like skyrocketing. How can you automate like a couple of things? Like how can you predict better the energy that you're going to buy if you're an energy supplier, for example? Like I work for Galp as part of the board, and of course you need to try to understand which energy do you need to buy, so then to sell to your customers. And at a time where the world is changing like rapidly, you need to be better at predicting these things. So I'm not sure there's like specific industries that will benefit, but there's processes like predicting, like having less humans involved in manual tasks to do less errors. I spoke recently with a startup that their entire order management process is done automatically. And I think this is something that in bigger corporations, like there's still a lot of people doing manual work. So I don't think there's a specific industry, but inside companies, in every single department, there's manual work that can leverage automation and ChatGPT in some cases. but I think automation generically. I don't know if you have like specific like industries that you are bullish.
So I think industries that have a very expensive, let's call it real world procedure, they will benefit from this sort of technology. So if you're doing something which is, you know, a wet lab, so you're doing some sort of experiments in a lab, those things are super expensive. You want to be able to use, I'm going to say AI in general, to predict something and avoid doing some work. So that I think anything that involves physical operations at scale, which are very, very expensive, and that you have to repeat them, and most of them can fail, then you want to minimize failure. So you're gonna use that. And I think the other big group is all the very heavy energy users. So energy is very expensive, and it's probably going to become more expensive because burning energy is just the wrong thing for many reasons, right? So what we're going to see is lots of these industries that are big energy consumers trying to optimize as much as they can. And I think, I'm not saying ChatGPT because I don't think it plays on that domain, but similar models or models that can help you do some sort of provision on the real world about something that is energy consuming, then I think that's going to be a big thing in the next few years.
Maybe you're looking for startup ideas. I think if that's the case, you need to go deep on an industry to understand the real problems and then go from there.
I think that's exactly it. Thank you.
Oh, hello. I have two questions, but my first one is, I'm still hearing from, well, decision makers, politicians. The question is it safe to use AI? Can we use AI? And when you start taking a close look at what they are saying, you could replace AI by dynamite and you get the same answers. And the thing is the industry, the researchers, the companies that are working with AI, are they doing a good job of explaining what AI is and isn't to those decision makers? Because then there are discussions, for instance, in the European Commission about the role and limitations to put AI into. And I wanted to know a little bit, what is your role and your take on this issue?
So it's very interesting because from my experience, most people, when we talk about AI, we talk about like futurism and like the grand vision of replacing humans. And that's not what AI does for us today. So the first aspect we need to be clear on is what can AI do today and how can organizations take advantage of AI? And like leadership, I mean, like there's lots of people have no idea. Like even in engineering and product, like there's lots of product managers that are supposed to take technology and incorporate that technology into products. Like few are the ones that understand what machine learning is good at doing. And that's one of like my I don't want to say struggles, but that's one of the tasks that I try to do today is like every time you have a conversation of, oh, let's do something with AI, let's do this thing with AI. And usually like there's like a little bit of magic in there. We need to explain people clearly what AI can do for us. And then like cascade this to everyone within an organization, like to legal, to the people that are selling, like unless the people that are selling software that has AI embedded know exactly what AI can do and is able to have a conversation with customers, then it becomes very hard for everyone. So education as like in every business that tries to do something new, educating customers is one of the things that's crucial, and we need to invest a lot of energy there. And I think that's a big challenge these days.
Even though it's hard. So you mentioned two type of stakeholders. You mentioned either clients in some organizations, if they are skeptical or not about buying AI, if you're a product company, or you also mentioned from the government political aspect to it. So I think it's easier to start with the government and political aspect to it. For sure, education, because our politics in general across the world, they don't, besides, the European Commission, VP, Vestager, very few politicians in the world really know how AI works. But I think politicians are very burdened with a huge problem of AI, which is misinformation. So all their answers come from that, burning problem, that burning issue that is not solved. This also has to do with they were not able in the last 15 years to make social media accountable, to make all these. So they are sometimes when I read some of these proposals for AI regulation, it seems like they are targeting social media and not just AI in general. So there is a huge gap on that, and I think somehow, procrastinating on that issue, which is very hard. Where also from a jurisdiction perspective, there are lots of legal implications on not regulating the web and making that accountable. So I think from a politician perspective, it has to do with accountability. It's very hard for you to, in general in social media, to make any of these organizations accountable. Who is producing the content, who is responsible for allowing it to spread, and so on and so forth. Other industries, they already have mechanisms in place. So if you try to use AI in healthcare, you need to, any device in healthcare goes really thorough, you need FDA approval, all of these authorities in Europe as well. So the mechanisms that are there for other devices can be used for AI. From the client perspective in industry, now I want to be a little bit more provocative. It's about overselling. And it's about, some clients are a bit fearful that we are saying that AI will solve all their problems, and then you need all this data. It's very expensive to maintain it. You have to use people to use AI, and I'm especially talking in areas that don't work with text or vision and so on. So tabular data and so on. Everything is very custom. So you don't have these industry models and so on and so forth. So it's very expensive. If you're a small organization, it's very expensive to use it. So I think it has to do with the two aspects.
So I think it's a very interesting question, and I think it opens up a lot of discussions. And so I don't think overall we're doing a good job in communicating things, and I think I think we haven't been able to stop what I think is the bad influence of the media, that they basically taken the ability to connect with people in a way that is not, I would say, true to what people are doing on the ground, right? So there's a lot of imagination around what AI is, and I think we can all agree with that. It's super oversold. But I think on our side, we are also not going, we're not really facing the issues, and we're allowing this sort of the discussion to go in directions which are not so good. So again, it's my personal opinion, but I think so when we have something which is called Center for Responsible AI, my first thought is, okay, so was there some irresponsible AI, so that we need to create a responsible AI? So and I think the way we're communicating what we're doing is misleading, right? I think it also putting ourselves or allowing ourselves to be judged against standards which are very high, right? So we bring a lot of ethics to the technical work in a way that I don't see a parallel in other fields, right? So nobody is talking about ethical metal industries, right? But you actually have to use metal industries to build bombs, and they kill people, and they're killing people now. And we don't talk about that, right? So I think for some reason, we allowed ourselves to be caught in this sort of trap of being judged against some ethical standard, which I don't understand what it is. And we created this whole story of responsible and ethical AI and all that, which obviously is important to apply technology in the good ways. But we've allowed ourselves to be just, pushed against the corner. And I think this is kind of a giant snowball that it's just getting bigger and bigger. Obviously, when we have all this, politicians will come in, politicians will talk about regulation. And I think overall, I think it's just a big, big mess. And as I would say, engineers, scientists, I think we need to get, the story back into control, which I think is right now totally uncontrolled.
So I think we are really past our time. So just one small question. I think you're the last one. Do you think if in the future we rely on AI for everything, we might lose our ability for brain to make effort and then being more easily manipulable?
I think I mentioned I have this fear, of what we are teaching our kids. We need to think about what we need to teach them to think. If we teach them to think, everything will be all right.
I'm looking forward to that moment. Because thinking just is so exhausting, and I'm being serious. Again, I'm being serious, okay? And I hope AI takes a lot of the burden. I like watching sunsets and I like surfing. So if AI can do everything else for me, I'm fine with that.
So I think he probably has deeper insights, but as Isabel was talking about the teaching aspect, wasn't that the same question when Google appeared and everyone started using Google, and then suddenly said okay, now what am I supposed to do at school? So I think there's hope.
Well, I started this conversation by saying that I often disagree a lot with Luís, and I could not end the conversation without disagreeing with Luís. Of course, there is a responsible AI, of course. And of course, we should strive for higher ethical standards that we used to do in the past in all areas. And we have seen how progress in technology not always have the impact we expect to. Often is not intentional. And I hope that in AI or in the future, all AI will be responsible. But at this moment, we need to put the word before. But I think it's just a question of years that, as we usually in the past, we had software that was not super, we had some requirements for software, and now we have non-functional requirements, and then we need low latency, high throughput, all these kind of things. I think with AI, it's not about optimizing for a single metric. And as we are scaling in it, I think we are going to add more requirements. And in the future, I hope that we will be able to do other things. And then I don't know how the VCs will kind of fund AI companies that are managed by AI CEOs, but I'm looking forward to see that.
I think we'll end here, and so that we can go to dinner. And thank you very much for coming and sharing your insights. And thank you for everyone in the audience for coming. Please eat the snacks and drink beers or take home. Hope you've enjoyed, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you a lot to our speakers, Pedro, Cristina, Luís and Isabel, to our audience, and to our sponsors, Unbabel and Zendesk. If you like this debate, please share it with your friends and subscribe to our meetup group to know more about our future events. If there are a few things you would like to know more about, check out our content, such as our newsletter, our YouTube channel, or our blog posts. Maybe we might have covered your topic of interest already in a previous session. You can get there through our website deeplearningpt.github.io. If we haven't covered it yet, you can find people with the same interest in our Discord server, or just feel free to suggest it to us through any of our communication channels, also available at deeplearningpt.github.io. We are also committed to decentralizing and improving representativity in our events and community. We also try to always bring different points of view to these topics, for example, technical versus business or academy versus companies. Help us to make you feel represented by suggesting speakers and researchers directly to us, as well through any of our communication channels available at deeplearningpt.github.io. Our intro music was done using Refusion and edited by me. And lastly, thank you for listening and see you in our next podcast. Bye.